Hey guys, welcome to another episode of The Vinyl Den, your channel for record collecting by record collectors. I'm Nick. It's Tuesday, time to talk about some new releases coming out this Friday, April 4th. There's a little over 300 albums coming out this week. I got 12 on my list for today. There's a bunch of links down below. You got links for the Vinyl Den Facebook group, for the merch page, for the Spotify and Apple Music playlist that I put together every week, and the Patreon page. So make sure you check all that out. Like always, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button down below, and make sure you hit that notification bell so you're notified every time I release new episodes. Like I said in the intro, there's a little over 300 albums coming out this week, but I'm only going to talk about 12 of them today. So if there's something you're looking forward to that I don't have on here, make sure you drop me a comment down below. Let me know what you're looking forward to grabbing. And like always, if you're unable to find these in your local brick and mortar stores, they should all be available online. I'll put links down below in the comment section for them. You can also always go over to the Vinyl Den store on Amazon. You got all the new releases on there. There's pre-orders, there's deals on records, all sorts of cool stuff to check out. For me, the big release this week is going to be the reissue of the self-titled debut album from Tracy Chapman. It came out back in 1988. It's going to run you about $23. There's a couple different versions of this. There's a standard black version. There's a red variant, which I think I've only seen listed in the UK or in Europe. So I'm not sure if that one's going to be available over here. And then there's an orange version, which is the indie exclusive copy here in the US. Of course, Fast Car was a gigantic hit when it was released. You know, this album would hit number one on the Billboard 200. It would sell over 20 million copies worldwide. Tracy Chapman would win 3 Grammys off this album, including Best New Artist. And that's an album that a lot of people have been waiting a very long time to get reissued. I actually did find a really good original copy, probably maybe a year and a half ago. I got it for like 25 or 30 bucks, which I think is a really good deal for the album, especially since I'd seen a lot of those copies go for 40 or 50 bucks. So earlier last year, Tracy Chapman on social media said the album was getting reissued. And then shortly after that, within probably a couple months, there was this pressing from Argentina that popped up. People were selling it. I know I saw a bunch of people online that were selling this album. No one ever talked about it not being an official pressing. And I'm pretty sure it was an unofficial pressing because it was never listed on Tracy Chapman's website. It was not listed on her social media account. It was not listed on her labels page either. And from what I've read, it wasn't a great sounding version of the album, so I decided to hold off and not pick up a copy of that because I knew this was coming. I didn't know when it was going to be, but I knew that there was an official pressing of this album coming. I'm interested to see how this one compares to my original pressing, though. But regardless how it compares, I think it's definitely going to be a better sounding pressing than that pressing from Argentina last year. So you got that one coming out this week. I've already got that one pre-ordered through my local record store. Then you also got the new album from LA Guns, Leopard Skin, coming out. So this is their 16th studio album. It's going to be on white, black, and gray splatter. It's going to run you about 30 bucks. LA Guns has gone through a bunch of lineup changes over the years. There's even been lawsuits over the who owns the rights to the name LA Guns. But this is the 5th album since Tracy Guns returned to the band in 2017. I think prior to that, it had been like 15 years since he'd made an album with the band, but it sounds like the band is really trying to get back to that earlier sound that they had on their first couple of albums. It really made LA Guns kind of a household name in the 80s. I don't think it'll ever match the quality that they had on their first couple of albums, but if you haven't been following LA Guns over the last 20, 25 years, they have some great tracks. I don't think they have any great albums in that time span, but it's definitely one I'll stream and check out this week. There's a couple of releases coming out this week from Depeche Mode. The first one is the very best of Depeche Mode Volume 1. So this came out back in 2006. It's a compilation of some of their biggest and best known tracks from across their first 11 studio albums. It's a 3 LP release. It's going to run you about 57 bucks. There is 17 tracks on here. This also does include the, new at that time, new in 2006 song Martyr. It was recorded during the Playing the Angel recording sessions, but it was never released on an album. And to be honest, I think Depeche Mode is one of those bands where I'm probably good having a greatest hits compilation. Maybe Violator is probably the only exception to that, but I think this is going to be available on, or it is available on CD, so I probably will just pick it up on CD. 57 bucks is a lot for me, unless I can grab it on sale somewhere. So that's coming out this week. Then you also got the reissue of Violator coming out. Came out back in 1990. It was their 7th studio album. It's going to run about 27 bucks. This is the big commercial breakthrough album. This is the album that has Enjoy the Silence on here. Personal Jesus is on this album. And Violator was more like a more mature, kind of a darker album than what Depeche Mode had done previously. I think those changes really helped make that album what it was. It would hit number one in a bunch of different countries. It would go on to sell over 8 million copies here in the US. Like I said before, I'm good with just a greatest hits compilation, but this is the one album from Depeche Mode I think I really need to have on vinyl. There's also a couple great looking jazz albums coming out this week. The first one is Art Pepper Modern Art. So this came out back in 1957. This is part of the Blue Note Tone Poet series. These are always mastered by Kevin Gray from the original analog tapes. The pressed RTI. They're great releases. They're great sounding albums. This one's going to run you about $39. So this album was recorded in late 1956 and early 1957. It was recorded in Hollywood, California, and it has this it's a more of like a West Coast jazz, like a cool jazz sounding album. There's definitely some blues influence on here also. I think this album is kind of widely seen as one of the gems of 1950s West Coast jazz. It's one of those albums where I'm not sure how long these guys had all played together, but there's definitely a chemistry on this album that you don't hear on a lot of other jazz albums. He's got some great musicians on here with him, though. He's got Russ Freeman, Ben Tucker, Chuck Flores. A great lineup, an incredible album. If you're unfamiliar with it, at least stream it and check it out if you're a jazz fan. And then the second one, I'm not familiar with this album. So this is Teddy Edwards' Sunset Eyes, released in 1960. It's part of the Blue Note Tone Poet series. So same thing. It's all mastered by Kevin Gray. It's pressed RTI. It's going to run you about $39. The only song I know from Teddy Edwards is Sunset Eyes. I've listened to it on a couple of different playlists over the years, but I'm really unfamiliar with anything else on this album, really anything else he's done in his career. It's an album that's received a bunch of great reviews over the years, though. It's definitely one I'll stream and check out this week. But he's joined on here by Joe Castro. He's got Amos Trice, Ben Tucker, Billy Higgins, which Billy Higgins is an incredible jazz drummer. But, like I said, I'm unfamiliar with most of the stuff on this album. I'll at least stream it and check it out this week. And then the third and final jazz album I got on my list this week is Bobby Hutcherson, Four Seasons. So this came out back in 1985. This is a music on vinyl release. A lot of times music on vinyl will do these like limited runs on colored vinyl, and that's not the case with this one. It's not limited to any certain number. It's going to be on black wax. It's going to run you about $37. You typically don't associate the vibraphone with jazz music, but what Bobby did across his career quickly made me a fan. I think him and Milt Jackson are probably the two best vibraphonists in jazz history. But I'm really unfamiliar with the whole later period from Bobby's career. But Bobby's got a really interesting connection to a couple other jazz greats. So his brother was actually really good friends with Dexter Gordon. Dexter would come over to their house, listen to jazz records with him and his brother. And then Bobby's sister, his older sister, dated Eric Dolphy for a while, and at one point introduced Eric to Bobby. And I think that's what really helped Bobby get involved in the jazz scene in the 60s. Like I said, I'm really unfamiliar with this later period of his career, so it's definitely one I'll check out this week. And then you've also got the reissue of 7 Mary 3's American Standard. It came out back in 1995. This is their debut studio album. This is music on vinyl pressing. So they did the limited series back in January, like the beginning of the year. I think it was limited to like 1,000 or 1,500 copies. It was on black and clear splatter vinyl. This one's just on standard black. It's going to run you about $35. This album, of course, is known for Cumbersome. But Water's Edge also got not as much airplay, but definitely got a lot of airplay, at least in my area it did, in the middle part of the 90s. But this is an album that I think is better than just the two songs that it's known for. And this is also an album that's been really kind of hard to find over the last couple of years. This was released or reissued in 2019 for Record Store Day. And I remember on Record Store Day, I picked up a copy of it. And at that time, it'd been probably 20 years since I listened to the album. I remember I walked around with the record store with it in my hand. I ended up putting it back up on the shelf. And then I think I saw it a couple of times after that, and then I hadn't seen it since then. I'd go on Discogs after I listened to the album. I was like, oh yeah, I probably want to own a copy of this. I'd go on Discogs and it'd be over $100, and I wasn't gonna pay that much money for it. So I figured it would eventually get reissued. I did grab a copy of that limited version that came out back in January, so I can at least pass on a copy this week. There's also this big 5 LP box set coming out this week from Helloween. This is March of Time, the best of 40 years. So this is a compilation of all the biggest tracks from across the German metal band's career. They've been on for 40 years, so that's where the title comes from. There's actually 42 tracks on here across the 5 LPs. It's going to run you about $150. It's going to be on red vinyl. Also includes an art print. There's a puzzle. It's also included in the box set. This is going to be available as a 3 CD set also. Comes in a little digipack. It's only a booklet that's in there, but it's only going to run you $22 if you really want all this music on some kind of physical format. It's really simplified. It's really a basic packaging compared to what you're getting in that box set. And I guess that's how they're kind of justifying the price difference between the two. I've never been a big Helloween fan. I think I've only listened to maybe a handful of their songs, but German metal is something that's really kind of I've never really gotten into, and it's definitely a genre that I need to explore a little bit more. So you got that coming out this week. You also got the reissue of the self-titled debut album from Damn Yankees coming out. This came out back in 1990. It's going to run you about $38. It's going to be on silver metallic vinyl, celebrating its 35th anniversary. Of course, this was a super group put together by Tommy Shaw Styx. You've got Jack Blades from Night Ranger on here. There's also you also got Ted Nugent in there. This is the first of two releases the band would release in the early part of the 90s. This was the band's big album. This is the album that had High Enough on there. High Enough, I think, hit number 2 or 3 on the Hot 100. It would help the album hit number 12 or 13 on the Billboard 200 and sell a couple million copies here in the U.S. But the band's second biggest selling single was actually on their second album, Don't Tread, which I don't think I ever listened to the entire album. I think I only listened to maybe just a couple parts of it. I probably only know a couple of songs off there. It still did pretty well. It hit number 22 or 23 on the Billboard 200, but they weren't able to match that same kind of magic that they had in their first album. There's also a reissue of the Complete Dirty South by Drive-By Truckers coming out this week. This came out back in 2023. It was their 15th studio album, 2 LP release. It's going to run you about $40. So back in 2004, Drive-By Truckers would release The Dirty South, which I think is still their biggest selling album, at least one of their biggest selling albums. It was a concept album that explored the southern part of the United States in the early 2000s. So in 2023, this was all band-led. The band would go back through and re-record and kind of reimagine parts of this album. I think technically they listed it as a reworking, but you've got resequenced audio on here. There's 3 additional tracks. There's 4 remixes. There's also updated vocals by Patterson Hood on here. I generally don't like these re-recorded albums, but since I'm not really all that familiar, I haven't listened to The Dirty South more than maybe once or twice since it was released. I'm probably not going to know a huge difference between the two. I'll definitely go back through and stream it. It's definitely an album I won't pick up, but, I'll at least stream it and give it a shot. But then the last album I got on my list this week is the Blues Brothers' Briefcase of Blues. It came out back in 1978. This is the debut album from the Blues Brothers, but it was recorded live in September of 1978. The band was in L.A. opening for Steve Martin. There's going to be 2 different versions of this. There's going to be a gold version and a blue pressing. Both of them are going to run you about $38. And these are 2 reissues of releases that Friday Music released back in 2022. Both those pressings, currently go for like $60 to $80 on Discog. So I think it's definitely a better price, getting this one than what you got a couple of years ago. So on this album, you got 12 covers from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. You got blues covers on here. There's some soul covers on here also. It was a big album. It hit number 1 on the Billboard 200. It would go on to sell over 2 million copies in the U.S. This is the album that really kind of got the Blues Brothers going. It would reach number 1 on the Billboard 200 here in the U.S. It would sell over a couple million copies also. This is one of those albums I haven't listened to in a really long time. Of course, I love the Blues Brothers, though, so I'll definitely stream it and check it out this week. Well, that's all I got for you today, guys. Thanks for checking the show out. Make sure you drop me a comment down below. Let me know what you're looking forward to grabbing this week. Like I said, I already got that Tracy Chapman on pre-order. I'll stream and listen to a new LA Guns album. I'll probably grab the Art Pepper. I got some question marks next to a couple other ones, but let me know what you guys are looking forward to. Like always, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below. That's all I got. Until next time, keep on spinning. Peace.